going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I've now reviewed all the Scream movies, and I've ranked all the Scream movies, but I wanted to bring you one more Scream-related video, and only my second character ranking on this channel. But today, we're ranking all the Ghostfaces from worst to best. One of the big trademarks of this series is the whodunit aspect and all the big reveals we get in the end, and each of them usually gives us a lot to talk about. So I wanted to discuss which ones were the most effective and least effective. Be prepared for some hot takes. So before we begin, let me know in the comments your ranking of the Scream villains. As always, this is just my list and not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these ranking videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content on a near daily basis. And this should also go without saying, but obviously, spoilers for every single one of the Scream movies here. If you're watching this video without having seen any of the other Scream movies, I don't know why, but please don't go any further unless you're just someone who doesn't care about spoilers. But if you haven't seen any of the Scream movies and wish to know nothing, this is your last chance. Go watch all the movies and then come back to this. But let's not waste any more time, and let's jump into it. In last place, Charlie from Scream 4. Quite possibly the only reveal I flat out did not like. Mainly because the character felt like the most stale in the lead up to his reveal, and even then, he's taken out pretty quickly right after. While he's initially set up to be another pseudo Randy Meeks, where Gail initially enlists his and his friend Robbie's help, and they explain the rules of horror remakes, he only gets like 1 or 2 moments prior to his reveal that I'd call memorable, with the big one being his moment alone with Kirby that gets comically interrupted. He feels like an otherwise throwaway side character for much of the film, so when we get this reveal, it doesn't have any sort of emotional resonance. Most of the Ghostfaces are all characters that were built up to like, but with Charlie, I couldn't have cared less about him for much of the film, and then he's killed off almost as quickly as he's revealed, so while the other reveal in this movie works quite well and more than makes up for it, this one left me feeling pretty indifferent. At number 8, Mickey from Scream 2. Now, I will say, I think Timothy Olyphant is great. I like the motivation of trying to gain fame from being caught, and when we do get to this reveal, he plays it up with a much needed over-the-top energy that's integral to the series, especially in the final act. I even like that he tries playing mind games upon his reveal and tries fooling Sydney into thinking Derek is his accomplice. But there's one big reason that prevents him from going any higher on this list, and that's he initially was not meant to be one of the killers. The original screenplay for Scream 2 leaked online ahead of time, and in the interest of still keeping the ending a secret, Kevin Williamson went back and changed the ending so that instead of Derek and Sydney's friend Hallie being the other 2 killers, it's Mickey, who was initially one of the good guys. The problem is, while Mickey has a fairly prominent role in the first half of the film, he literally disappears for a good chunk of the second half before coming back in the last few minutes for the big reveal. So while he does work a little better than Charlie because he at least made an impression earlier on in the film for the short period of time we saw him, he's gone for way too long of this to have the gut punch the reveal should have. Again, nothing against Timothy Olyphant, he's incredibly committed, but the fact his reveal feels more like a rushed, last-minute change really shows. At number 7, Roman from Scream 3. While Scream 3 is easily my least favorite of these movies, I don't mind this reveal, even if I don't love it. We find out Roman is Sydney's half-brother, and he's apparently the sinister mastermind who is actually pulling the strings all the way from before the first movie. And that's a fine enough way to tie everything together, even if Scott Foley doesn't present himself as being this mustache-twirling villain the way some of these other Ghostfaces do upon their reveal. What's actually funny is, I actually think Mickey makes a little more of an impact in the short time we saw him early on in Scream 2 than Roman does here, who spends most of his time on screen whining about Stab 3 not getting made. But Roman gets the edge because, while he's not exactly one of my favorite characters in Scream 3, he's at least in there long enough that it connects just a little more upon the final reveal, and he's still not built up as totally unlikable prior to the big reveal. Plus, I do like this trick he pulls where he fakes his death towards the end so it initially throws suspicion off him, and I will also give him some extra bonus points because he's the only villain in all 5 movies who works solo. At number 6, Richie from Scream 2022. This is another one where I don't mind the reveal, but I'm not exactly head over heels about it. While the film does a great job at building Richie up to be someone we care about, with Jack Quaid giving a great performance, like Richie himself actually says, it's kind of a bummer it's him. I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of retreading the idea where the love interest is the killer, because, keep in mind, while this is technically only the second movie where it's the love interest, they faked you out with that idea for much of Scream 2, and it's also used as the killer's planned cover-up in Scream 4. And I got that the idea was about going back to the original story, and they do tease a little bit with Dewey mentioning it early on, but this really retread the territory of 3 films, not just one, even though this is technically the second film where the love interest is the killer. That being said, I did like his motivations, as it represented toxic fandom and the entitlement that comes with some hardcore fan bases of long-running franchises, and that's something that's especially relevant to this day. So that at least made up considerably for the fact that this reveal is something that felt a bit derivative. At number 5, Amber, also from Scream 2022. Honestly, this is only by like a margin, and I came close to putting her and Richie at a tie. The thing with Amber is, she's not quite as well written prior to the big reveal as Richie is. I mean, she is overprotective of Tara, and she's against Sam from the beginning, so that does lead to an extra layer of tension. But unlike Richie, we don't follow her as closely for much of the film. The main reason she's just a fraction above Richie on this list, though, is just because of what I said about Richie's reveal being derivative. But on some positives, she shares the exact same motivations embodying toxic fandoms gone too far, which, like I said, was great and something that lands quite well. And I think once we actually get to the reveal, Mikey Madison goes all in on the over-the-top feel needed for the big reveal, with a scene-chewing performance that made the final confrontation fun, even though she meets almost the exact same fate she met in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, like Richie, while I had some criticisms for this reveal, the positives greatly made up for them. At number 4, Billy from the original Scream, and I know this one might be a bit of a hot take, putting the one who started it all not even in the top 3. And to be clear, Skeet Ulrich does a fantastic job with the character, especially once we get to the big reveal. He goes so over the top that it's just a blast. Plus, his whole revenge motivations and his connection to Sidney's backstory work so well, considering Sidney's history prior to the main events is an integral part of her arc. And unlike a lot of the other reveals where it almost completely comes out of nowhere and this elaborate backstory is built at the last second, the seeds are planted early on, as we do hear of Billy's mother having left, so this does a nice job at laying the groundwork. Sometimes, though, it's a bit too much, which is what held me back from putting him in the top 3. Because, like I said earlier, part of the shock with these reveals is that you're meant to build up a liking for all these characters before it's revealed one or two of them were betraying everyone else the entire time. When it comes to Billy, though, he's kind of a dick for the entire time. I get that part of his deal is that Sidney becomes suspicious of him from early on, as does Randy, but the problem is, even during moments where he's supposed to be acting normal, he's still just an unlikable person. So he really has that in common with Charlie. But at least Billy is given so many memorable lines and notable moments that we come to enjoy not liking the guy, as opposed to just feeling nothing with Charlie. So he still gets a spot high up on this list, and Charlie gets last place. At number 3, Mrs. Loomis from Scream 2. What makes this reveal work quite well is her changing her identity through most of the film, posing as this plucky journalist named Debbie Salt who idolizes Gale for much of the film. So it's one that takes us completely off guard. This one also benefits from its specific casting choice, as Laurie Metcalf was mainly just known at the time for her role on Roseanne, where she's neurotic but also one of the nicest people on the planet, and she channels a lot of that same energy through most of the film, completely throwing suspicion off her as this likable enough throwaway character who Gale just repeatedly steps on. So it makes this reveal feel like such a shock. Plus, it was just a great way of tying things back to the original in easily the simplest and honestly most logical way possible. Pure revenge. Her motivation for all this is simply to get revenge on Sidney for killing Billy. And sometimes, a simple motivation like that is all you need. It's a great way of making the two movies flow into one another nicely without relying on too many contrived stretches or suspensions of disbelief. At number 2 is Jill from Scream 4. Another one with a pretty simple motivation, and that's because she's jealous of Sidney's fame and nothing more. She wants to get rid of Sidney, frame her ex as the killer, and get all the attention in the spotlight as the sole survivor of these attacks. While I have her accomplish Charlie as the worst of the villains, Jill works incredibly well because she was positioned to be the central new character in Scream 4. So it's another great way of throwing us off the scent by having us look really only at the rest of the friend group for the killer, only for it to be the one who's being positioned as the new central figure for these movies. Plus, given it's made known from the beginning she's Sidney's cousin who she knows fairly well and Sidney's the protagonist, it's a great way of keeping suspicion off her, as even though the killers are always someone you know, you wouldn't think it would be the cousin of the protagonist. So all that combined makes it a nice shock. But Jill especially gets a nice boost high up on this list simply because once we get to the reveal, Emma Roberts just crushes it. The scene of her injuring herself as her cover-up is nothing short of masterful, and her unrelenting obsession with finishing the job once we get to the hospital leads to an incredibly tense final act in the movie, ending it on such a strong note. But in first place is Stu from the original Scream. Matthew Lillard gives quite possibly one of the most over-the-top performances in all of the original movie, and is one of the main reasons the film bordered on dark comedy territory. He kind of comes off as a little creepy like Billy, but we also find ourselves laughing, sometimes uncomfortably the entire time, for many of the weird quips he comes out with. And what's even more fun is, even upon the reveal, it's not like he has a sudden shift in character. He still acts like this whiny high schooler, saying some of the silliest things that would line up exactly with how he would act prior to the reveal, and we still find ourselves laughing at him the entire time, even if we're now no longer rooting for him. I'd say of all the reasons the original Scream is as entertaining as it is, it's because of all the very memorable, quotable characters, and he's one of them. But the main reason Stu gets the top spot on this list is for one simple reason, because it's no secret Halloween was a major influence on Scream. And part of the reason Halloween is so unnerving is because Michael Myers is just pure evil, with no other motivation whatsoever. And we see that influence most notably in Stu himself. While he gives some half-assed response of peer pressure when Sidney asks what his motivations were, it's pretty obvious this guy is just pure evil with no rhyme or reason. Billy may have the elaborate revenge scheme that connects to Sidney's arc well, which he shares with a few of the other Ghostfaces, but Stu is someone with clearly no morals who goes along with a killing spree just because, and it's clear he has no empathy or logic whatsoever. And despite all the twisted reasons these other characters have, the fact he really has none whatsoever makes him all the more unnerving and dangerous. And that's why he comes in as the number one of the Scream villains. And that's my ranking of every Ghostface in Scream. I hope you enjoyed that. Like I said, this is only my second of these type of videos after I did it for Godzilla and King Kong monsters last year, but I have been exploring possibly doing more of these, so if you want more of these, definitely let me know in the comments, and hopefully we'll get to do this again soon. But in the meantime, let me know, what's your ranking of the Scream villains? Do you agree with this list at all? Do you disagree with it? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.